Hello everybody and welcome back to World of Warships with Wadres, and today I am going to be streaming basically an overview of the commander skills for World of Warships, and I might even towards the end make a few recommendations regarding the setup of commander skills for ships beyond, or at least for co-op players, because that is of course my specialty, and I'm certainly not overly keen on getting commander skills set up for PvP players. I will let that be for other community contributors, or even just other players in general. Unfortunately, it does not look like my webcam is going to be cooperating with me today, so it may pop up, it may ignore me, but we're kind of just going to have to let that go, I guess, for the time being. Unless I can figure out why now. I thought it was just because I had my power settings on my tablet set up a little bit differently, but this is seeming like it's something else entirely. Okay, looks like I got it back for the moment. I don't know if it's going to stay that way, however, we will certainly see. Let's see, if I try moving it this way, maybe it'll be happier that way. We'll find out soon enough. If it bugs out again, I'm sorry to say I will not be I will not be working on trying to keep my webcam up for the stream if it's going to be this finicky. Anyway, let's go ahead and pull into screen here and start going over some of these new commander skills. There are a number of them. Some of them are duplicates on different tech or different trees. Some of them are otherwise, and anybody who watches will notice, I believe, that I do have skills set up for various ships on this one commander already. So just be that as it is, that is my build for kind of a general setup. Because, especially since in this case, and I do want to go out there right now, this is Halsey. He is a elite premium commander, and I just like being able to bounce him around various ships. You'll also notice I've got a bunch of ships in my port that are now listed as no commander, because I am planning on over time dismissing a number of commanders and getting some of the elite EXP from them. And again, premium ships, I can just basically transfer in any commander that I want anyway, so there's really nothing lost there. And you'll notice that the ones that are listed as no commander are also primarily my premium ships anyway. Anyway, on that note, let's go ahead, let's start talking about these skills. And I'm going to start on the destroyer skill line. Now, some of these skills, again, have duplicates across the ship lines. Others are unique to their individual branches. Just about one thing you're going to see on just about all of the ship lines, you're going to see Grease the Gears, which is a 20% boost to rotation speed of any turrets. And this is a flat 20% bonus to anything. It no longer has a qualifier for caliber. So you're going to see the same bonus whether you're on a destroyer or a battleship. The only thing that is going to influence that at all is it is a flat 20%. It is a flat rate. So you're not going to be getting, say, stellar increases for one ship because it's got these smaller guns at this tier. No, it's actually going to be a very flat, I guess, 1-to-1 improvement, where it's literally based on the traverse speed of the ship that you have, and it's going to be a 20% increase on that. Now, I suppose what I should do to make this a little bit easier, let's go to US ships. Just filter out the premiums. And no, I'm not doing this to show off. I'm just wanting to be able to switch around easier. Let's go to Hill and assign Halsey there. Because otherwise, if I hit the wrong button, it's just going to back me right out again. So, we've already gone over Grease the Gears, and again, this is also Halsey. He has an improved version. I believe the standard version right here, yes, is... that is 20%. So what... Wait a minute. Something tells me they forgot to look into this for the unique commanders, especially for things like that. So, that might be something that they'll need to address looking forwards, because that should definitely, I mean, if it's given a star as an enhanced skill, it should definitely give a greater bonus than the original. Unless what it is that the commanders... No, it's the same as the base skill, so I think Wargaming goofed on that one. Okay, anyway, for destroyers, coming back to that, we have Liquidator, which is a flat 30% chance to increased chance for causing flooding with torpedoes. Now for destroyers, this is going to be a big deal because a lot of your damage over time is going to come from flooding in a lot of regards, especially with as many torpedoes as destroyers tend to pump out. So you definitely want to... I can definitely see this being a useful skill, especially for just ensuring that you get flooding a little bit more regularly. It bypasses some of those defenses, and it does depend, I believe, somewhat upon your torpedo flooding chance, which, by the way, I don't know if anybody else has noticed, is not actually listed or printed anywhere. So you have no way of knowing how much that actually influences your chances or not. But I believe this is a flat 30%. It is not a multiplier. It is a flat 30%. So, hooray, awesome, good to go. Now, other ships, you're not going to be able to actually see this one on the trees effectively at the moment, because it's marked as not being effective on this ship. I thought I had him spec'd for it. I thought I had skill points used up. I guess I didn't. I guess I didn't have him set up. But, okay, so, anyway, Consumable Specialist. This is, again, a 1-point skill. It's simple progressions, 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point, same as it has been the last several years. This one gives you a flat 10% reduction to the reload time on consumables, fighters, spotting aircraft, DFAA, main battery reload, and torpedo reload booster. That's really all there needs to be said there. This could be very effective on some destroyers that have decent consumables, specifically those that carry DFAA, main battery reload booster, torpedo reload booster. So, say Asashio or Harugumo could definitely use this one for the torpedo reload or their main let's say you're looking at a French destroyer with its main battery reload. That's definitely going to be a benefit there. I do know there are a couple of destroyers that also have DFAA, so they'll enjoy that. They're definitely not going to see benefits from the fighter or spotting aircraft, however. Now, you also have the gun feeder skill here. And on Halsey, this is an improved skill. The base skill is 50%. So, but Halsey, it's enhanced to a 75%. And basically, if you are switching shell type from loaded guns, and yep, looks like I lost my webcam again, so screw that. So if you have your guns already fully loaded, all of your guns fully loaded, and you want to switch shell types, all you have to do is opt to switch that type directly, and it will be a direct 75% reduction to switch the shell type from the loaded guns. It is not a reduction for switching shell types on guns that are already loading. This is the same as, I think it was a reloading expert or something like that on the previous skills, and it's basically the exact same skill, just renamed. You have incoming fire alert, which is warning about salvos fired from a distance of more than 4.5 kilometers. Personally, as far as I see it, I mean, this is basically the same as, I don't think it's, no, Sixth Sense is World of Tanks. Incoming fire, I forget what the skill was. I never actually used it. And personally, the way I see it, if you're spotted and you don't have incoming fire, you're going to be lucky anyway. So I really don't see a use for incoming fire alert. Preventative maintenance, this is going to be, I think, something that's a little bit more standard. In fact, it is pretty much standard for all destroyers, was and will be. Risk of module incapacitation reduction of 30%, pretty straightforward. And this is, again, turrets, torpedo tubes, steering, engine. So anything that can be disabled, it will reduce the chances of that being disabled. Again, straightforward skill, and something that has been in game already for a long time now. Hasn't even changed its name. Next we have Pyrotechnician, used to be Demolitions Expert. Not sure what all this does to help out, especially in a destroyer. I mean, granted, if you've got a destroyer that's on volume of fire more than anything else. But, I mean, 1% chance increase to causing fire from HE shells or bombs. Or secondary battery, I should say. I'm a little bit hesitant to suggest this one because you have other skills that are definitely of better utility for destroyers, especially if you're more torpedo focused. This would definitely be more of a gunboat focused skill, but even then I'm wary of it. There's other things that you could probably get some more utility out of. Here's another one. Swift Fish, and this one I might actually recommend. It is a 5% flat speed increase to torpedoes. And again, I say that it is a 5% speed increase, so when you apply it, say, to the torpedoes on the hill here, her torpedoes go from 59 knots to 62 knots. I mean, it's not much of an increase, but it can effectively cause a ship to misjudge how long it will take for torpedoes to get there, misjudge a turn, and maybe eat a torpedo or two. Now, the other thing to be said on this skill is this used to be torpedo acceleration on the previous commander skills tree, but now it is just a flat torpedo speed increase. So it's a flat bonus. You don't receive a reduction to torpedo range of 20%. So say you've got 10 kilometer torps, or in the case of the hill, 5.5 kilometer torps, you're no longer going to see those torpedoes now only function out to just a little over 4 kilometers. Or in the case of a ship with 10 kilometer torps, it would have cut that to 8 kilometers. So it is a bonus. You don't get a flat 5 knot increase anymore, unfortunately. But the trade-off is you aren't sacrificing torpedo range anymore. So there is that to be said. Personally, I wouldn't mind the full 5 knots and a little bit of a range cut, but you know what? Wargaming decided this was the way to go, and I think that's the way it's going to be, whether we like it or not. Let's see, next we have consumables enhancements. This enhances or improves the action time of hydroacoustic search, surveillance radar, smoke generator, and engine boost. Flat 10% increase. So if you have, say again on the hill here, where we look at its equipment, it's got smoke generator. That smoke generator is now going to operate for 33 seconds. That may not sound like much, but there are some smokes out there, like, say, the creeping smoke generators, where that can actually be a major bonus. Because say that you have a creeping smoke that's active for 60 seconds, suddenly you get another 6 seconds on top of that. So it's actually a pretty decent skill for some smokes. But here's the other thing. It also affects the action time of engine boost. So 2 consumables on one ship that would get bonus from this, and that would suddenly give you an extra 12 seconds of engine boost. So a little bit of another 12 seconds that you can move around the map just a little bit faster, which I would definitely say is a reasonable bonus. Now let's say we were also on a ship that I'll use, let's say, oh, phooey, where is it? I know I've got at least one. I think I might actually have to open up my... Yeah, I'm gonna have to open up the regular tech line ships. Let's open up destroyers. Fletcher should have... No, it doesn't, really. I thought Fletcher had Hydro. Oh well. Kid has DFAA. I could have sworn there was a US destroyer that had Hydro. Ah, but here's another one that would be benefited by, say, the first consumable skill. A 10% reduction to the reload of the torpedo reload booster. Right here. Monahan would get a bonus from that, reducing its reload of the TRB by a whopping 24 seconds. So that's almost half a minute earlier that would be able to be used. Anyway, coming back to the hill, but let's say... let's say I switch over to another tech tree, like, say, the Germans. Let's keep it destroyers, please. Where, say, let's look at the Z-46, where we've got that nice, beautiful German Hydra. Active for 100 seconds, so that's another 10 seconds that you would get out of that Hydro as a German destroyer, on top of a better engine boost and a better smoke screen. I mean, honestly, who would pass that up? You'd be stupid to in some regards, except for the fact that when we look at it, there are a couple of other skills you're going to want to look at doing first. Again, primarily as sort of standard no-brainer destroyer skills. And that is starting us with this one down here, Last Stand. Last Stand is kind of a no-brainer destroyer skill. Now, granted, the patch 10.0 does give us a 20% speed or rudder capacity upon engine or rudder knockout now. So we are no longer left stuck standing completely defenseless, motionless in the middle of a map anymore, but you can definitely improve that with Last Stand, and I believe it is like a 30% bonus. It doesn't actually state how much that actually improves it. But anyway, something else that you have for destroyers, you have... Let me actually work on my destroyer build here since I'm here. You also have extra heavy AP shells. Now, there are some destroyers that aren't going to benefit from this too much, but you do have good AP destroyers, like, say, the Germans, who would benefit from this a little bit. And I will stress that it's probably not the best option, mind you, but it wouldn't hurt. Where you get an extra 5% damage from your AP battery shells. Now, for the German destroyers, let's go again, just check out my T-61, say, where you've got good main battery guns. I mean, 5%, that's another, what, 150 damage per hit? I think. Let me pull out calculator here real quick. Yeah, that's an extra 150 maximum damage per hit if you tag citadels. I mean, I've personally, I mean, it's little things here and there, but let's say you're looking at something that's got a bigger main battery, like, say, the Z23. This one could benefit quite highly from that improved, well, maybe not highly, but a little bit better from that improved damage, because 3,700 times 0.05 gives us 185 extra damage. So a total of 3,885 damage for a solid Citadel hit from Z23. So, I mean, I could see where that could have a decent argument for it. But in general, as far as working with other destroyers, I mean, maybe you could even argue with it for, say, the French destroyers, with that, especially once they have that main reload going. But it's not that much of a help for some of the others. I mean, again, it would be like pennies on the dollar. I mean, 2,100, you add 5% to that, that's less than 100 hit points. I mean, granted, it's still an extra 100 hit points of damage, but again, you've got other skills that you can definitely gain bonus from here. Up to and including, again, Last Stand. You definitely don't want to let that go. And again, you've also got something else that you can get excellent use from, and that is consumable enhancements with consumable. So that extra 5% damage, that's very situational, where you're actually, one, close enough to do Citadel damage, or even just respectable damage in the first place to other ships. And I just don't see how it would be effective in the long run. I mean, if you have a gunfight where you're just gunning and gunning and gunning right from the start, then I could see it. But again, that would have you playing gunboat. You would be constantly spotted, and that's not the way destroyers are necessarily meant to be played. The only other gunship I could potentially see benefiting from this is, say, Harugumo and the rapid-fire gunboat destroyer line for the Japanese. And even then, how often do you actually get citadels on those where you're going to actually see that raking up an extra, any appreciable amount of damage? I mean, granted, there you're more relying on damage over time, and that extra little bit for even just non-pens would add up. But that's still... I mean, let me pull up the Harugumo here. Where is it? There it is. Harugumo, with its main battery, maximum AP shell damage of 1,700. So you're not even adding 100 points to that. Let's see, 1,700 times 0.05. 85 maximum increased damage per hit, and that's assuming that is a full penetration into a citadel. Now, granted, the Harugumo is firing fast enough and often enough where that probably will add up over time, but again, it's an over time thing. You're not getting a major sudden shell blast that is going to see any major improvement from that one. So I would argue against that one, personally. Then, of course, there's priority target. That one is definitely, I would definitely say that is more, sorry, that's a little bit more useful for PvP play. As far as co-op, I really don't see that being a viable choice. Again, the way I see it, if you're detected, you may as well assume that you're being targeted or shot at. So if you're not being shot at, bonus. Otherwise, it's easier just to assume that you are. I really see no point in priority target, especially if you're a co-op special player like I am. Now, we have other skills like main battery and AA specialist. This is a 5% reduction to your main battery reload, as well as a 10% increase to your AA damage. Now, this has a very niche location within destroyers. There are some destroyers that do have decent AA, and it would definitely benefit them. Specifically, some of the German destroyers would definitely benefit from that 5% reduced reload battery. And because the German destroyers, I'm sure somebody will argue me on this, the German destroyers do have relatively decent AA for destroyers. Even though they don't have DFAA, they can still take a chunk off of anything. So this one I would definitely wager is a good skill for German destroyers. Ships like the Harugumo definitely benefit from it because it's a main battery reload reduction on top of an AA defense buff. And anybody who's played against a Harugumo knows that Harugumos love to eat planes. Next up, we have Fill the Tubes. This is basically Torpedo Expert. 10% reduction to torpedo tube reload. Standard switchover. Just a rename of a skill. And the downside here is it is a 3-point skill. It used to be, I believe, a 2-point skill. So, yeah, you do have that trade-off there. However, let's say you're looking at, say, Pyrotechnician up here, which used to be Demo Expert as a 3-point skill, so those two, figure those have been reversed. If you're used to doing Pyrotechnician and reload, torpedo tube reload, then you're really not losing any points bonuses there. Next up we have Adrenaline Rush, which used to be a 2-point skill, so this is this one does hurt just a little bit, and it's a 0.2% reduction to reload of main battery, secondary battery, torpedoes, and continuous AA, and an improvement, I'm sorry, to continuous AA damage as you take damage. This is basically just a greater clarification of the pre-existing Adrenaline Rush skill, and I do think it needed that. Inertia Fuse for High Explosive, basically IFHE. I mean, everybody knows what that is. It hasn't changed in its parameters at all from the previous iteration, from patch 9.11 or 9.12, whatever it was that we had last. You get a flat 25% increase to armor penetration of HE shells and secondary battery shells at the cost of a 50% reduction of your base fire chance. So if you have, say, you're looking at the Harugumo, instead of a 6% fire chance, you now go down to 3%. But you are now able to penetrate about 37 millimeters of armor. So you've got a choice here. You can either opt for setting more fires, but not having the penetration, or you can opt for setting fewer fires, but having better penetration. Enough said there. As you can see with the build on my Harugumo here, I've already opted for the Adrenaline Rush and the faster reload. Of course, you do have Superintendent, which is a 3-point skill. I believe this was a 3-point skill before, so that hasn't really changed around, where you get an additional charge to all consumables. That's basically a carbon copy from what it used to be. Certainly nothing incredibly special. Then we've got Survivability Expert. Oh, and by the way, Superintendent, the only way I would see that being a major bonus is for, say, PvP, because co-op matches, again, if you're a co-op specialist like myself, that's really not doing much for you, because the matches are often so quick that you don't even go through half of your consumables most of the time. Survivability Expert, we have a flat 350 HP increase per tier of the ship. So at tier 10, that's 3,500 hit points that your ship gains. This is really only benefiting destroyers, but you do have that on all tech trees, I believe, with exception of... No, I did not want to do that. You do have that across all tech trees. So just... I mean, it's there. Oh, you don't have it for battleships. Good. That's actually a good thing in my opinion, because it's a worthless skill for battleships. But you do still have it for cruisers, and you don't have it for aircraft. You do have it for aircraft carriers, I believe, in the form of an aircraft health increase. So, but yeah, Survivability Expert. For some destroyers, that's a major bonus, especially on some of your less maneuverable destroyers, like the Harugumo. But overall, definitely not something that I would recommend under all circumstances, because there are some things that you get better utility from. And the Harugumo, I think, also benefits from having other skills here anyway that improve her main battery reload or other defenses. Although I should probably argue a little bit in my skill set here. Let's go ahead and reset that while I do have the bonuses. Let's go ahead and set those, set that. I do want that. But I think I'm also going to go for... See, I originally opted for Dazzle, but I don't think that's actually going to do anything for me personally. Swift Fish for these torpedoes really isn't... I mean, you get a good bonus out of it, but I'm not sure it's worth it. You've only got the one launcher, and you do have torpedo reload booster, so as long as you hold onto your torpedoes and use them wisely, I really don't think we need to worry about fill the tubes very often. So here, the argument could definitely be made somewhat towards Survivability Expert, giving you 29,000 hit points. And I would definitely say you'd be right to do so. You could also disable this one. I mean, Harugumo is decent as she is. And instead you would look at, say, again, going up to a 4-point skill like Concealment Expert, which would also benefit from the Swift in Silence, which I haven't even got to discussing yet. I should probably finish that off before I go talking about any sort of builds or recommendations. I really should. So let me sidetrack that point for right at the moment. Grade 4, Tier 4, skill 4 skill point skills. You've got Main Battery and AA Expert. Again, this is an AA bonus, and this does have some benefit to some destroyers as well, because it is a 20% increase to the range of your main battery, as well as a 15% increase to damage from AA flak bursts. So let's say I'm looking at the AA of the Harugumo here. That would be a 15% increase on top of 1,540. I mean, that's a respectable increase to damage to aircraft, on top of the fact that you've got 6 explosions. So I've seen, again, Harugumo shred aircraft already, so that would just make her even more lethal. On top of that, you have the Main Battery and AA Expert skill, which improves her range by 20%. That would push these guns out to, let's say, a little over 15 kilometers, 16 kilometers, 15 kilometers. And, I mean, there's definitely that to be said, especially if you're trying to chase something down that's not shooting back as frequently, and you're just shooting at long range, or even just spamming over an island. So there is that to be had for the Harugumo as well. And, I mean, I could argue that with Adrenaline Rush, you really don't need Main Battery and AA Specialist. And you would still get your AA bonus from having the flak burst damage. Concealment in a Harugumo is kind of a moot point. You're already a destroyer that's almost seen from space, but I would definitely say go for the Swift and Silence, because as long as you are undetected, you have an 8% bonus to speed on top of your speed boost, your speed generator, your engine consumable. So there is that to be said as well, and definitely very well worth it. I think I'm gonna set that as my build for now. See how it plays out. Coming back to Swift and Silence, you do have a main battery reload time increase of 5%, which, I mean, for a destroyer like the Harugumo, that's really nothing. I mean, that's 2.8 seconds. On 5 rapid reloading 100mm guns, you're probably not going to feel that overly much. And again, as you take damage, Adrenaline Rush is going to knock that down anyway. So, I mean, it's there. But the bonus is you get a dramatic increase to your ship's speed of 8%, which, I mean, as long as you're undetected, that's got you moving at a good almost 40 knots, especially once you engage your engine booster. So very respectable skill to have, and I would definitely say it's also very useful, probably more for your torpedo boat builds where you're not doing so much gunboating. So this is really, at least for me, only going to have any relevance as long as my Harugumo stays undetected, and that's really just in the early stages of a match where I'm trying to get into position, and that's as far as that goes. But it can also probably help me in trying to chase down targets, like, say, an aircraft carrier at the end of a match, by giving me a little bit more speed to chase it down, as long as it is not keeping me detected. And therein lies another thing. If you're in a destroyer and you're being dogged by an aircraft carrier that is keeping you spotted, that's going to hurt you right there. Because that is a 4-point skill that is a valuable skill that is basically going to be negated by a harassing aircraft carrier. So keep that in mind as well. Under those circumstances, you might as well go for Concealment Expert, which is a basic carbon copy of 4-point skill from the previous Commander Tech tree, 10% reduction to ship's detectability range, and I would not ding you at all for opting for that. The way I tend to play, I'm a lot more open, aggressive, so I'm probably going to look more for this one. And if I get into matches without CVs, all the better. Another skill that is basically unaltered, but it has... Actually, I think it was a 4-point in the last iteration, wasn't it? Radio location, where... I mean, this one hasn't changed at all. Basically, it tells you the nearest enemy ship and gives you the direction that they're in. Not much else to say there. Fearless Brawler, this one I could also see as being a bonus to ships like, say, the Harugumo, but there is a downside. First off, you do have a extra flak burst, but at the cost of a 5% reduction to your detectability, or 5% increase to your detectability, so you are more detectable. And you also have a 10% reduction to your main battery reload. So let's say you went with another build. Let's say I wanted to redistribute this again. I'm not caring so much about that because, again, right now we have free respec anyway. So say I wanted to go this build here. I would have a offset main battery reload. I would still have an overall reduction to my main battery reload. And I would have, but I would lose some of my concealment. I would now be visible out to 7.3 kilometers. Whereas if I went with, say, Concealment Expert, I'm only visible at 6.2 kilometers. And if I went, say, with those skills, I ultimately negate the bonus to my main battery, but I am detectable and I am able to move around faster while I am undetected. So there's some decent skills to be had there. And of course, if you're in a Haruguma, honestly, how often are you worrying about your torpedoes? Seriously, how often are you worrying about your torpedoes in a Haruguma? So anyway, let's go ahead and set that right at the moment. Now let's look at... we also had Concealment Expert. I already discussed that. The last skill is Dazzle, and this one I could see as being a benefit to really only torpedo boats. Because if you're a gunboat where you're getting into gun duels for more extended periods of time, this one is going to be utterly worthless to you. You only have a 20%. You have a 20% reduction to the dispersion of shells that are fired at you, but only for 15 seconds after you've been detected. After that, dispersion ellipses go back to normal, and you are just as susceptible as always. So gunboats, this is worthless. But if you're a ship that's just charging in to do a torpedo run and then get back out of dodge, that 15 seconds can mean a whole hell of a lot of damage that you no longer have to worry about taking. So you can keep your range, you can stay undetected, but you can play it a little bit riskier, get detected, and not have to worry about that dispersion being as much of a concern to you. So, I mean, there is that to be argued. But again, that is a solely torpedo boat skill. I do not see it benefiting any gunboat ship at all, unless it's literally just I have one ship, one destroyer that's on low health, very close to me, that I'm going to blap out, and then I will be undetected by anything else. And then I could argue it being valuable. Maybe. But that's the only circumstance under which I could see a gunboat having that kind of benefit. So, that is cruisers, or destroyers, and you've already seen what I've got as far as my Haruguma build. Let's say I look at my Shimakaze, which is straight up Torp Destroyer build. I mean, you can already see the way I'm going. I'm going for torpedo reload, adrenaline rush, durability, so preventative maintenance and last stand. I've got concealment. And most likely what I'm going to do with this one for another 4-point skill is Swift and Silence. I'm definitely not doing anything for my main battery reload. The other thing that I could do, I mean, honestly, Shimakaze does have usable guns, but if you're getting into a gun duel in a Shimakaze, you're in bad shape. Let's just put it that way. You're in bad shape if you're getting into a gun duel in a Shimakaze, and you're probably not going to win that fight anyway. Unless your target is on very low health. The other option could be to go with the Dazzle skill, but the way I play is a little bit more aggressive, so I'm more likely to opt to the Swift and Silence and just close distances while I am undetected a little bit faster. Gunboats, I mean, you already saw my Harugumo. I'm not sure. Let's see. I do have something of a jack of all trades build in my Z52, where you'll see a little bit of a difference here. I have opted for some of the basic torpedo skills because, Z52, it does have some phenomenal torpedoes, and I do definitely want to allow those to shine. And I am using the detectability, but I've also opted for Fearless Brawler. It does bloom my detectability out, but I've also taken concealment, so I've only got about a 5% total reduction to my detectability. But I do get that extra reload on my main battery. So my guns are firing, well, let's say without it, my main guns are firing at every 4 seconds. Now they're going to fire every 3.6 seconds once this activates. And here's the other thing that you have to be careful of with some of these skills, and I should probably have mentioned this earlier. When you are looking at your captain's skills, some of them have requisites now, where there are some certain conditions that must be filled before they activate. You have passive points, and then you have active points. Swift and Silence has its passive is the 5% reduction to main battery. The active is the 8% increase to ship speed, but only if you are undetected. If you are detected, you lose that 8% bonus. Right here, Fearless Brawler. The passive is the 5% reduction to detectability, or the 5% increase to detectability, and the 1 per extra flak burst. The active is when you are, if after you've been detected, you have a 10% reduction to your main battery reload. So you do have to be careful of some of these skills. And again, the Dazzle is another one that is activated. It does not have a passive section. So it is only activated after you've been detected. You've got 15 seconds, and then you have to go off detection if you ever want to activate or get the bonus from it again. I think there was one other somewhere. I can't remember. I don't think it was on this one, actually, now that I think about it. So just be wary of that with some of your commander skills. Now some of them actually have requisites for their activation to actually get the full bonus from them. So be wary. I say next, let's go ahead and look at cruisers. This is where things get a little bit interesting still. Let's go ahead and pull out my Buffalo. Now, some of these skills are still the same. I mean, you've got Grease the Gears. You've still got Swift Fish, but it's actually moved to a 1-point skill. Consumable Specialist and Enhancements are still the same. Gun Feeder is still in the same location. Incoming Fire, Last Stand, Priority Target, Superintendent, Survivability Expert, Concealment, Radio Location. IFHE actually goes for cruisers up to a 4-point skill. Probably to disincentivize it, and I'm not going to argue that, because it's a very... I would argue that it's a semi-worthless skill for most cruisers, honestly. Because on cruisers, you do have the higher fire chance. You don't really need an incredible amount of penetration, so yeah, I would argue that for cruisers, especially unless you're dealing with like an especially light cruiser, like say the Flint or the Atlanta, it's basically worthless for a cruiser. So be wary of IFHE on cruisers. But you also have the Fill the Tubes here. It's gone from a skill tier 3 to a tier 2 skill. And you still have Pyrotechnician as well as Adrenaline Rush, Radio Location. I mean, most of these skills are still the same. So at this point, I'm just going to discuss the ones that are different. Interesting. Wait a minute, why does he get a 15, only get a 15 when... Sorry, just double checking something here. Okay, Destroyers. I think Destroyers... Oh, there's 15% there. So maybe I just missed something. Maybe I accidentally switched to a commander that also had a boosted Adrenaline Rush and didn't think, or Grease the Gears and didn't think about it. But, okay, so base Grease the Gears is 15%. I should mention that right now, I feel. Whereas Halsey does have the improved at 20%, and I think I may have just had a couple of commanders that also boosted that 20% instead. I don't know how that happened, but okay, whatever. Anyway, moving on. Cruisers. You do still have Consumable Specialist, Grease the Gears. Swift Fish now is a Tier 1 skill for cruisers. Gun Feeder, again, that's your reload reduction. Incoming Fire Alert and Last Stand. Those are pretty straightforward skills. We've already discussed those earlier on the Destroyer tree. You do have some new skills, however, for the cruisers. You've got Expert AA Marksman, which is a 25% increase to priority sector damage, and an extra flak burst. And for AA cruisers, this is a definite bonus, just knock planes out just a little bit faster, especially in today's world of CVs where things are, you definitely want those bonuses. And I will argue that there are a number of skills on this line that really aren't as much of a bonus, if we're being honest. So I would say definitely Expert AA Marksman. Priority Target, we already discussed that with Destroyers. Eye in the Sky. This affects spotter planes. You get a 50% reduction to the cooldown of your spotting aircraft. You get an extra 2 charges to spotting aircraft, but at the cost of 50% to the action time. So let's say I am looking at my Buffalo here and I've got the spotter aircraft outfitted. That means it would be active. Sorry, it would cool down in only 1 minute and 20 seconds. But I would also lose half that action time, so that aircraft would only be up for 50 seconds, a little under a minute. So I could recycle it faster and I'd have 6 charges instead of 4. But that is debatable as to the kind of battles you get into on a regular basis. Are you wanting that spotter up more often, or are you wanting to have more time when you have it up there? So that's one of the things that you have to consider if you were to look at taking that skill. Consumable enhancements, we have already discussed earlier. This is your basic active surveillance skills. So radar, smoke generator, hydro, engine boost. If you have ships that can use it, awesome. But I think there are other skills that you definitely get greater benefit from at this tier for a co-op specialist. And again, I would definitely say, again, for co-op, AA. You do have Fill the Tubes, which, if you've got a ship like, say, the Buffalo here, which doesn't have any torpedoes, it's basically worthless. But if you have a torpedo cruiser, this one might benefit, but again, you have to be wary of other skills that you are giving up. And of course, there's Pyrotechnician, which gives you the standard 1% to secondary and main battery HE. Again, overall, I think you've definitely got better skills, especially when you're talking heavy cruisers, that's 15 over 14. You're not gaining much there. You'd do better off with that one for, say, an Atlanta or a Flint, something that's got smaller guns and a lower fire chance. Next up, moving up to the Tier 3 skills, we have Heavy HE and SAP shells. This is a 10% increase to damage from your HE and SAP shells. However, if your guns are over 149 millimeters, which, let's be honest here, in World of Warships, unless you're at Tier 1, which guns aren't over 149 millimeters, you have a nerf to your detection of 15%. So let's say if I were to put that onto my Buffalo here, she would suddenly be seen at 15.2 kilometers. That is the same range as some battleships. So that would definitely hurt you if you are trying to play a more stealthy role. If you're wanting just a raw DPM role where you're staying out of sight, say spamming HE over islands, I could definitely see this one being a bonus. Or say you're in an Italian cruiser where you're just charging down in your smoke exhaust, then I could see this one being a slight bonus as well. But again, just remember, you are sacrificing detectability for that. You do have, for cruisers also, Enhanced Torpedo Explosive Charge. This is a 15% bonus to your torpedo damage. That is very respectable. And let's say I were looking at, say, my Atlanta instead of my Buffalo. Where is he? Let's swing him on over. 15% torpedo damage increase. That gives me almost 20,000 damage. I mean, we're talking Japanese destroyer damage here from the Atlanta's torpedoes. And of course, if you're on, say, a Japanese cruiser, like, let's look at the Otago here. Torpedo damage. Otago actually has some relatively poor damage, doesn't it? So, I mean, it does affect your torpedoes quite a bit. And definitely enough where I would argue if you're focusing more on torpedo cruiser, you will get some use out of it. And definitely, I would definitely argue for it as like a second or third take on the level 3 line. But otherwise, probably better to just kind of leave it be until you've had some of your other more semi-valuable skills replaced or taken into account. Now, where's my Buffalo Commander again? I think I just applied him to the Atlanta, didn't I? So where are you? Atlanta, where are you? Okay, seriously? You know what? Wargaming actually added a nice bonus. Recall Commander. There we go. And he's right back where he's supposed to be. Okay. Let's see. Let's go back through. We've got Adrenaline Rush. That's basically the same as we've discussed earlier. Heavy AP shells. Now, this is one that could benefit some heavy cruisers, specifically along the German line especially. And also some, maybe some light cruisers, maybe if you've got a high rate of fire. But I would definitely, I mean, I could even see this one being a major bonus for like the British light cruisers. An extra 5% damage to your AP shells. And I definitely would not call you wrong for taking it. I mean, hell, look at the Buffalo here, her main battery. I mean, 5% increase to that. 5,000. I mean, she'd gain more than 250 damage per shell on that salvo. So definitely worth considering, if nothing else. Let's also, just for grins, look at the... Oh, where is it? Oh, I know it should be in my priority ship somewhere. Where are you? There it is, the Hindenburg. So if I were to put heavy AP shells on my Hindenburg, there's 5,900 damage. That's almost 300 points worth of damage per shell that heavy AP shells would be adding. Now you can see that I haven't opted for it because, again, I think there are some other skills for more aggressive play that I can go for. Like, again, enhanced torpedo explosive charge. But that is up to you. Superintendent and survivability expert are the only ones left really on that line, and those haven't changed very much. So let's now go back to the Buffalo and see some of the other skills. And this is again where we start seeing some of the skills that have prerequisites for activation. For example, top grade gunner. You have a passive skill that is 10% reduction to secondary battery reload, but you can activate an 8% reduction to the reload time of your main battery if you have an enemy spotted within your standard detection range. So let's say for my Buffalo, I'm at 13.2 kilometers. That means that my guns, as soon as I have another target within 13.2 kilometers, those guns are going to be firing 8% faster. If I opted for heavy HE and SAP shells, where I had that skill, suddenly this skill would be activated at 15.2 kilometers. to have that extra 8% faster reload, on top of doing more damage with my HE and SAP shells. So just have that in mind if you're, again, looking more at your DPM builds. Next, we have the Outnumbered skill. This is an activated skill. It has no passive component. If there are more visible hostile ships than allies, meaning you are outnumbered in your visible zone, you have a 10% reduction to dispersion and an 8% increase to ship speed. Now, I would argue for co-op purposes, this one might potentially be useful, because I know there are some cases where I've gotten into gunfights in World of Warships where I've had I've definitely fit the bill for this skill, but it is very situational. And again, I'm not sure whether the dispersion would help more so than or the ship speed helps really either. I mean, I suppose the speed would do one thing for, say, throwing off aim. But for dispersion, I would argue that I would probably rather have a main battery reload than dispersion here. Because, again, you've got more targets, and granted, you're not missing as much if your dispersion is being reduced, but I would think you would want to focus more on having damage per minute. Just more shells out in general. So that is why I think I actually opted for top grade gunner for its main battery reload instead of outnumbered, because it's also not requiring me to be in the outnumbered position as much. Here, all I need to have is a target spotted within my detection range. Here, I have to have visible ships, which means they're probably all within my detection range anyway. I mean, I could see an argument for having both of these skills, and both of them would be phenomenal over, say, what I do have, which is AA Gunner. I'll get to that one in a little bit, but if you're in a match where you have aircraft carriers, I would say go for the AA skills, because you don't need a aircraft carrier harassing you while you're also trying to deal with 5 other ships. Let's put it under those qualifications. Of course, you do have radio location. I mean, that's still standard. IFHE, concealment expert. And of course, you do have one AA specific skill. This is a changed skill. I believe this is probably their answer to what used to be AFT. You have a 20% increase to your continuous AA damage and a 20% increase to your flak burst damage. So again, this is a substantial increase to your capability of just swatting down aircraft. And, I mean, 493 damage on my Buffalo, continuous, plus 2,222. I mean, that CVs are going to have, I would personally say CVs are going to have a hard time getting through this one, even if they do go for any of the aircraft survivability modifications. Because, again, that actually offsets some of the damage reductions that they can apply on CVs, and we'll get into that with the CV skill tree. But as far as those of you who are more interested in your brawling skills, I would definitely say more top-grade gunner and outnumbered versus your AA skills. And for level 2, again, if you're not worried about your AA skills, I'd definitely say either consumable enhancements or pyrotechnician. For grade 3 skill, I mean, Adrenaline Rush is kind of a standard skill no matter what you look at, and depending on how you build your ship, if you like to get in for those broadsides, heavy AP shells, or if you like to be more the island spammer, definitely heavy HE and SAP shells. You could opt for Superintendent for those extra charges, but again, if you're, say, this would be more from the perspective of me as a co-op specialist. Superintendent doesn't really do you much because your matches don't usually last that long. So I would prefer to go with skills that give me a little bit more utility from my ordnance than from my consumables. So that is cruisers out of the way. Let's go ahead and look at the battleships now. So let's see. Let's go ahead and bring Halsey back in on my Montana. And this is where I wanted to see something else too. 25%. Okay, so we do have a little bit of a discrepancy here. The destroyers, it seems, have a standard grease the gears of 15%. Their guns are relatively quick anyway, usually, so I can understand that one. You don't want to... If it's too powerful, it makes those guns swing around too fast. Okay, I can see that. Then you have cruisers. Like, say, Helena, where you still have a 15% reduction. But now you get up to battleships. And what I'm seeing here, yeah, probably because it's a more valuable skill for battleships, they make it more valuable on its bonus. So that's the argument that I think I can go with and stick with and be happy with. Grease the gears for battleships goes up to a standard 20% increase to your main battery speed. It also goes up to being a level 2 skill. For, say, a special commander like, say, Halsey, where it's enhanced, you get a 25% increase. So anyway, let's go through these skills here. And let's get away from somebody who does not have the enhanced skills. Jeez, how many of them do I have? I'm sorry, that was not bragging. I was literally annoyed by that more than anything. Okay, here we go. So battleships do have a little bit of a rearranging still. There are some new, or some adjustments to the tier 1 skills. First off, you have gun feeder here. It's still there. That's your reload expert. Pyrotechnician moves down to a tier 1 skill. It's a 1% to your fire and secondary, to your fire chance for secondaries and main battery. But again, you're in battleships here. Who's caring about 1% fire chance? Well, let's be honest. I mean, maybe for your secondaries, but seriously, who cares about fire chance in a battleship? Here, you're more concerned with your AP damage. You do still have your consumable specialist and enhancement skills, so those don't change. They're even the same value overall. But battleships, you now have emergency repair specialists. This is a 3% reduction to damage control party reload and repair party reload. And if you're looking at your survivability skills, that's a definite bonus right there, even if it is not much. Of course, there is incoming fire alert and preventative maintenance. Everybody already knows those skills. We've been through those on the other two tech lines so far, so we're just going to let that go. You do have AA Gunner, which is a 10% bonus to continuous AA damage and AA flak explosion damage. So if you're a battleship that does have a little bit better AA, those are definitely some skills that you want to look into. You've also got Vigilance, which torpedo acquisition range. I mean, that is basically a carbon copy from the previous tech commanders. So, I mean, for my purposes, as a co-op player, I could definitely get better value from other things. But, I mean, if you're in PvP, I could definitely see that one being valuable if you're being dogged by a destroyer. But I would also say that active maneuvering can trump vigilance any day of the week. Same with priority target. Active maneuvering for damage mitigation, and basically just assume you're going to be targeted anyway. Inertia fuse for high explosive. This is actually a grade 2 skill now, and let's be honest. Again, battleship. You're not worrying about your armor penetration for high explosive shells here. You're really not. Especially with a main battery, let's say on the Yamato, which has 77 millimeters penetration. When are you worrying about your penetration for high explosive shells in a battleship? Plain and simple, you're not. So that's basically a worthless skill. Here you're only worrying about that for your secondary batteries, and I would definitely say your secondary batteries have other things that you can definitely put on them than this. Moving up to the grade 3 skills, we have super heavy AP shells. And this one, I will argue against unless you are staying way, way back out of range, which, if you're a co-op player, is almost impossible. If you're a PvP player, then maybe this one could be argued. You get a 5% bonus to the main battery AP shell damage, which, say for the Yamato, I mean, you've got 14,800 damage that you're doing. Let's add 5% to that. Times 0.05. That's an extra 740 damage per salvo that you're doing on a single shell for a single citadel. And, I mean, that could be the difference between that one guy escaping with 500 health or getting just completely erased. So, I mean, there could be an argument for that there. But you do have a major nerf. You are experiencing a 30% reduction to the increase to the extinguishing time of fires, and a 30% increase to the time it takes to recover from floods. So this is a major impact to your survivability. And if you're not going to be staying at long ranges where you're not going to be worrying about this so much, I would definitely argue very heavily against this skill. Next up, you have long-range secondary battery shells. Straightforward, this is basically sort of a BFT, I think, skill, or AFT sort of skill. You get a 20% increase to your secondary battery firing range. Enough said. You get more secondary battery firing range, they get out to greater range, they can do damage earlier. And this can actually come into effect with one of your other skills on the level 4, which I'll get to in a minute. Of course, you also have Adrenaline Rush, you have Basics of Survivability. This is the first time you see it in the commander skills. You don't have this for destroyers or for cruisers. It is a 15% reduction to flooding recovery, fire extinguishing, and to repair time of any module that is incapacitated or any damage that you take overall, your damage over time. So this is a good survivability skill to have. Especially if you're just taking a lot of fire or taking torpedoes. This is a straight up bonus. You also have enhanced anti-torpedo protection. This is a 10% increase to torpedo damage reduction. So, and this is actually something of a negation for another skill that we're going to see on the aircraft carrier line. But let's say you're in a ship that has low torpedo damage reduction. Let's say we're looking at one of the battleships. You're tired of just taking lots and lots of torpedo damage as a Montana or an Iowa, where you've got, say, only, 37%? So you can knock that up to 47%. I mean, hell, you can almost make the Yamato impervious to torpedo damage, knock that up to 65%. So, I mean, there is that to be had there, and it is a very good, strong survivability skill, especially if you're dealing with lots of destroyers or lots of aircraft carriers. You also have the Expert AA Marksman skill here as well, and if you're running an AA battleship, all power to you. I think you've got better utility from other skills. I will say that straight up. Deadeye. And this is one that's caused a little bit of controversy among some of the community contributors. I can see some argument for it from my own perspective. As long as you have no visible hostile ships within your standard detection range. So let's say I'm working with my Yamato, and, well, I can't really use that as a valid example, can I, at 17.5 kilometers. Let's say you're working with a low detectability battleship, though, something that's visible at only 12 or 13 kilometers, or you've actually built your Yamato for concealment. Let's say I do that instead. And you're not going to let me even consider the options, are you? Okay. Anyway, let's say I've gotten my Yamato down to 13 kilometers detection range. Anything outside of 13 kilometers, I've got 10% better dispersion on. And this is why it's a little bit dubious for community contributors, because you have the meta in-game right now of long-range spamming, or battleships just going out along the edges and not really getting into the fight. And I can see this being problematic because it encourages that kind of gameplay. I can understand that in PvP. As a co-op main, I don't see it being that much of a problem because, again, co-op personally pushes more aggressive play. In fact, I can actually see this one being less useful to me than somebody who specializes in random ranked or PvP overall. Now, where I do see this benefiting me, however, as a co-op player, is if I'm playing something that's slow, like, say, the Arizona, the Colorado, the Mutsu, ships that only have like a 20-kilometer top speed, where you're not chasing anything down, and say you're the last ship, you're fighting, and the last enemy ship is way the hell and gone on the other side of the map. And you're trying to shoot at that distance. You may be keeping a viable shooting distance, but your dispersion at that point is so egregious that it's just not hitting. So under those circumstances where you're chasing down something where it's, say, the last ship in the match for a co-op player, and you're in a slow as hell battleship like the Colorado, this skill is for you. And trust me, I've been feeling that the last few days. So, yeah. Just putting that one out there for you folks. For those slow battleships out there, that skill is a godsend. The only other thing that the slow battleships like Colorado would help with is maybe an extension of your main battery range to get even more benefit from that. But that's beside the point. Now let's look at the improved secondary battery. 35% reduction to dispersion of secondary battery, of any secondary battery shells. I can argue that this is not as valuable for battleships as it could have been under its previous iteration, which was manual fire control for secondaries. Manual fire control for secondaries was like an 80% reduction. So now you've only got a 35% reduction. Now, granted, some ships, especially the Germans, have gotten a major accuracy buff to their secondaries. So you're getting a 35% bonus on top of that. I can see that being effective. But if it's something that does not have a valid secondary spec, do not go with any of these secondary skills. I will say that out loud. Long-range secondary battery and improved secondary battery, if you're not a decent secondary battery spec ship, I mean, the Yamato, I can argue because she does have somewhat decent secondaries. But, say, Montana, Arizona, any of your standard battleships, anything that's not German line or French line even, don't go with secondary skills. They will not benefit you in any regard, at least unless they get adjusted. Unless you're playing point-blank range, they will not help you out much. Next, we have close quarters combat, and this is another battleship-specific skill. This is secondary battery reload and main battery reload. So it's a straight reload buff to all armament that is firing shells. We're not counting torpedoes. So it's not helping your Tirpitz torpedoes much. But secondary battery reload, so if you do have something that does offer a viable secondary battery build, this one helps you. Close quarters combat also has the active component. If you have an enemy spotted within firing range of your secondary battery, and this can also affect targeting ships other than what is actually detecting you, or other than the ship in your secondary battery range that is spotted, you have a 10% reduction to your main battery reload. Say for the Yamato, that is a whole 2.6 seconds, but it's still 2.6 seconds off of your reload and very much worth having. And when, I mean, I figure go for that with the Yamato anyway, because you've got, I mean, your ship's reaching out to 12 kilometers. Yeah, well, okay, 10.5 kilometers after some of the secondary adjustments that have been made. She actually gets a bit of a secondary battery nerf after these skills go live. Think about that one for a moment. But, I mean, as long as they're within 10.5 kilometers, maybe closer to 11 if you also count the introduction of the signal flag. I mean, these guns can actually be almost on par with some of the U.S. battleship guns as far as effectiveness of rate of fire. So why wouldn't you want this skill, honestly, in a battleship? Especially if you're a brawler. I mean, my God. And for co-op, this is like a must skill. Because, again, in co-op, you're getting into the thick of it. So, yeah. Why not? Now we get back over to the remaining survivability skills. You've got Emergency Repair Expert. And this one does have some bonus if you're going for a survivability build. This is 10% damage control party action time, plus a damage control party consumable charge, although this really only benefits your Russian battleships. But you also have a 10% increased action time of repair party, so that's more health you can get out of your repair party. Anybody tell me he's a British buff here? And you also get a increase to the number of consumables. Yes, how many conquerors can we print in a single battle? Okay, anyway, I mean, it is a good survivability skill regardless of what battleship you're in, but this is definitely a major bonus to those British battleships, and to, as a side to the Russian battleships, which only get a set number of damage control party charges. Of course, you do still have Concealment Expert at its standard 10%, and we have Fire Prevention now as your final in line, which gives you a 10% reduction to fire chance and a reduction of 1 fire. This is basically the same as it was in the previous iteration of the commander skills. It hasn't changed much, and if you're looking at your survivability build, I'd definitely say that's a must for you. Personally, I prefer my DPM brawlers. As you can see, I've already outfitted this one. I've got my secondary build, I've got my DPM, a little bit of AA. Going over to my Montana, again, I've got more survivability skills. I've still got my AA gunner, and I've got a couple of my DPM skills. I've got my turret rotation, I've got my main battery reload, adrenaline rush, and close quarters, but you'll notice I've opted to do away with entirely the secondary battery skills, because Montana's secondaries, whoever brags about those, seriously. So, worthless skills for the Montana, but definitely good close quarters skills still, because, again, in my particular case, I do get close, so I will end up within that 7.3 kilometer range in my Montana at some point or other, brawling with another battleship, so I will still definitely benefit from close quarters combat. Other things you do have, I know I have my GK around here somewhere. You know what? Let's filter out. Let's just filter out those. That'll definitely give me less. Seriously? I don't have my GK? Ah, there it is. Yeah, GK. Secondary skills, definitely. I mean, why... unless you're PvP, where the new meta is shifting so dramatically with these for long-range HE spammers. But in PvP, GK, secondary battery straight through and through. There's no argument for anything else that I think could ever be made here. You're in a relatively quick battleship. You have a decent secondary battery range, 12 kilometers. I mean, for crying out loud, why wouldn't you spec for secondary batteries here? So that's to be said. And of course, if you are looking more for your survivability, you could go for those skills as well. And I'm not arguing against that. If you're PvP, that's probably more the way to go, is more for your survivability skills. For co-op specialists, there's your moving buddy right there. Next up, let's look at aircraft carrier skill trees. So here, and I do believe I can actually go ahead and bring in Halsey on my FDR, because I don't think he actually benefits any aircraft carrier skills. Yeah, he has no special aircraft carrier skills. So, no special bonuses here. And this is where we're basically going to be discussing just about the entire spread again. Because just about every single one of these skills is unique to aircraft carriers. Starting off with Last Gasp. This is a 1-point skill, and it restores the engine boost for the last attack flight of airplanes. So if you're used to going to the absolute last squadron, last attack flight that you can manage in a squadron, this will benefit your boost speed, or your ability to boost, but really not much else. I definitely think you get other utility, or better utility from other skills. Improved engine boost, however, there are a lot of aircraft carriers that can definitely say this is necessary because it's just time in AA bubbles. Who doesn't want to spend less time in AA bubbles if you're an aircraft carrier? So, engine boost duration, 5%, pretty straightforward. Engine cooling reduction of 20%, again, that's effectiveness or resupply time of your engine cooling. I mean, I might argue against that one because, Lord knows, I will burn through my engine cooling consumable in the first half of a match. And then I'll be out for the remainder of a match. So, last thing I need to be doing is using that even faster, especially for, let's say I'm looking at my FDR here, which I also just put out the review video for today, I might add. I mean, yeah, no, you're going to go through that before you even get your first attack run off. Let's be honest here. So let's let that one go. Air supremacy, however, is a big deal. This is a 5% reduction to your aircraft restoration time. So the faster your aircraft replenish, and if you're looking at your tier 10s, you definitely want to knock that down a good bit. And again, let's say you're good. You just got your FDR. And you look at your aircraft resupply, and holy shit, I'm at 103 seconds just for my attack aircraft, and that's after putting on some of the restoration bonuses. Oh yeah, go for the restoration bonuses. Other skills, and these are more defensive skills than anything else. You have Direction Center for fighters. You have... It basically gives you an extra fighter in your protective fighter screen. I really don't see much use to that, so that's kind of a worthless skill as far as I'm concerned. And another semi-defensive skill, you've got Search and Destroy, which affects your airdrop, your patrol fighters. These are the consumable that your squadrons can use to drop fighters at a random point in the map. It extends the patrol radius by 10%, which I suppose can help if you're trying to spot something that doesn't put out a whole lot of AA. And it will also create this wider swath where enemy aircraft that come in there will get intercepted and potentially mowed down by your patrol fighter. But as far as utility for your aircraft carrier from an offensive standpoint, it's kind of worthless unless you're working to deplane another aircraft carrier. And, well, in the current aircraft carrier environment, we all know how effective that is. It's really just blasting through their current reserves more so than anything else. Moving up to grade 2, we have torpedo bomber. This is a 10% reduction to the arming distance of torpedoes. And anybody who's played aircraft carriers to a respectable level will understand the merits of this one. Arming distance also equates to lead time. The more time it takes to arm your torpedoes, the more lead you have to give in order to accommodate that, relative to the torpedo speed. So if you can drop that back by like 10%, hooray. I mean, hell, for the original iteration of the Japanese aircraft carrier per the CV rework, where I think there was one torpedo option where you had like 1,000-meter torpedo reduction. This skill would have been nice back then. But it's not now. You only have the one option for Hakuryu torpedo bombers now. It's a lot shorter range, but you know what? It's still viable. One thing to note, however, is that this can have some issues with, say, the swift fish skill. Because the torpedoes move faster, it does actually increase the arming range. So it will kind of come out somewhere in the middle, but you'll still have an effectively overall reduced range, just not as much as it would have been before. Improved engines for an aircraft carrier that has slow aircraft, that's a must-have skill right there. So again, for, like, say, the FDR, improved engines, 2.5% increase to your aircraft. I mean, damn. I mean, let's say I send this commander to the reserve. 130 knots versus 170 knots. Every plane at tier 10 moves faster than this. So definitely want to employ those skills, depending on your aircraft carrier. The only aircraft carrier that I could see not utilizing this one so much are like the German aircraft carriers, where they boast faster aircraft. There you're looking more towards your survivability skills. Next up, you have Repair Specialist. And this one I'm going to argue a little bit against. Yes, you do have a 10% action time increase to the repair party of your aircraft, and you also get an extra charge. But you are losing some of, and that can be survivabilities for, say, your torpedo bombers or dive bombers, depending on which one it affects. But you're losing some of your other utility skills. You're losing squadron speed. You're losing torpedo bomber speed. You're also losing torpedo speed in some cases. So I would argue very heavily against that one. There are so many other skills that you can use that would give you so much more benefit in my belief. Considering the meme ships, the German aircraft carriers, you do have secondary battery skills. These are defensive skills in nature. You have secondary battery reload time. It's also a bonus to your AA damage output. So you have a 10% reduction to your secondary battery reload and a 10% increase to the AA damages. And, I mean, I can argue those are definitely viable skills, but and really only viable more for, say, the German aircraft carriers again. Because there you are the only places you really have the good, effective secondary batteries. And, I mean, honestly, what aircraft carrier complains about not having enough AA? Aircraft carriers, especially with the ship-launched fighters that patrol them almost the entire match in some cases, they're basically just big fucking no-fly zones. So, yeah, that one's really only useful for the German aircraft carriers. And I think also because it just makes them even more no-fly zones also. Let's see. Next up, we also have another fighter skill. And again, one that I will argue against to a point, within reason. It does give you more fighter charges. So, I mean, if you're, again, just combating another aircraft carrier, focusing on just intercepting them more than doing anything else on the map, I can argue this skill does have some viability. You get an extra charge to your patrol fighters. And that's for each squadron, I might add. So, figure 3 more that you can drop around the map. But, again, you've got other skills that you can get better utility from. This is a very situational and very, I'll call it dubious defensive. Because it really only helps against anti-air. It does not affect your... It does not affect anything that has to do with other ships. It's not DPM. It's literally just dealing with the other enemy carrier. Which some players, especially if you're in, say, PvP, might thank you for. I mean, hell, in co-op, some players might thank you for that too. But you've got much more versatility. You've got much more offensive capability with other skills. And in co-op, you're definitely focusing more on the offensive than the defensive. Coming up to your level 3 skills, you have sight stabilization. And this is, I mean, this one was brought in from the previous commander's iteration. You get a 7.5% reduction to the aiming time, or a 7.5% increase to the aiming speed of your reticles. So attack aircraft, torpedo bombers, skip bombers. I'm not sure. I'm sure they've got skip bombers on there because they're thinking about introducing skip bombers. That's the only reason that's there right at the moment, because otherwise you'd only have the 3 on there. But basically, it is what it says. It's just less time that it takes for your aiming reticles on your attack to narrow down. So, I mean, I could argue that it's viable if you're focusing on your attack times, but there are still other skills that I would probably take first and then maybe come back and choose that one. Here's another one that could potentially be beneficial specifically for your German aircraft carriers, though I will argue this one slightly also. That is your enhanced armor-piercing ammo. It is a 3% increase to AP rocket damage and a 3% increase to AP bomb damage. But I will definitely put this one out there with a grain of salt, because 3% on 3,100 damage, you're like pennies on the dollar for damage here. It's not going to make the blap on a flat broadsiding cruiser any more impressive. It's not going to make getting that Citadel hit with your AP dive bombers that much more impressive. I mean, it might be the... Okay, say you do get one bomb through, it might be the difference again between leaving them with 500 HP or dead. But again, you've got some other skills in regards to maintaining some of your offensive capability that I think are definitely more viable to go for first. Coming back to something that's got everything at least a little bit more visible, you do have Demolition Expert, and this one I could probably... I mean, I'll argue against this one, personally. Because, okay, rockets, you've got a low damage chance there, and I mean, yeah, an extra 5% on top of 7%. I mean, that's by proportion a pretty substantial increase. But now let's look at 5% chance of fire from the bombs. You've got a base 64% chance of causing fire with bombers from the Midway. You're not going... You should not be suffering to set fires here. And a 5% increase to that, I can't justify that one. I really just cannot justify that one. So take that one with a grain of salt. Now, granted, if it's more just about consistency of setting your damage over time, your fires, all power to you. But again, I personally cannot justify it. Next, however, we do have something that is valuable to an aircraft carrier, and this is aircraft armor. A 10% reduction to continuous AA damage. And, I mean, let's say if I'm attacking my own Midway, that's 59 continuous points worth of damage that I'm no longer absorbing. If I were looking at my Richthofen, that's a reduction of 64 points that I don't have to worry about. It is aircraft survivability, and for aircraft, especially, say, a German CV, that is a big deal, because you have very low survivability aircraft in a German aircraft carrier, so you want to take less damage. You want to improve your aircraft health however you can. It's less arguable for a U.S. aircraft carrier, but again, survivability. It's not just survivability of aircraft going to target, it's getting out of Dodge to return to the aircraft carrier. So anything that you can save in that regard, even if it's one aircraft, you're better off going with your survivability skills here. Now, this one might be a little bit more arguable, and this is survivability expert for aircraft. 25 additional hit points per aircraft per tier. Now, that's 250 points, say, at tier 10. And a German aircraft carrier like the Manfred von Richthofen is definitely going to benefit from that. I have not spec'd for that because there are a couple of other skills that I can use on that ship anyway. But, I mean, 250 hit points, I mean, that's 1,700 that I could have on my attack aircraft here. Or over 2,000 on my torpedo bombers. Definitely 2,000 on my bombers. So that is raw survivability on those aircraft. If I'm looking at something like the FDR, however, where I've got like 32, 39, 37, go for another 3-point skill. Your aircraft are survivable enough already. Even looking at something like the Midway, I mean, you've got 2,300 there, you've got 1,700 there. I mean, I could argue that maybe it's viable there. But again, you've got other options that you might want to consider first. So just throw that out there for any of you CV mains out there. Next, we have another fighter skill. This is Interceptor. And again, I will put the same amendment on this one, that it probably is something that you want to stay away from, unless it's something that's just been bothering the hell out of you. You have an increase to the patrol radius of your fighters of 10%. Or patrol fighters is replaced by Interceptor. And that's a huge difference because, one, the patrol fighters will also do some spotting for you. If you switch them over to Interceptors, they no longer do spotting. They will not attack hostile fighters, and they will not attack hostile ships. In fact, hostile fighters, I believe, should ignore them also. They will only go after any aircraft, any enemy aircraft, attack aircraft that is coming after your friendly ships, and do nothing else. So you actually lose some functionality here. You would have one, lose the ability to drop these as a distraction for enemy fighters, for one thing, or to engage enemy fighters, even to defend your own, and you would lose spotting capability from those drop fighters. So, I mean, if you're more interested in taking out those attack squadrons, all power to you. But I'd say only if that has been a sticking point of annoyance for you. Otherwise, other skills, definitely, hands down, go with another 3-point skill. Or even a 2-point and a 1-point. But, yeah, I'm having a hard time justifying even why that line of skills exists. Sorry. Finally coming down to grade 4. Let me actually take a drink here so that I'm not talking past a dry throat. Oh, that's better. Okay. Coming to your level 4 skills. You have Bomber Flight Control. This is a 5% increase to cruise speed of bombers and skip bombers. Now, I do not know if this affects your torpedo bombers. It does not. So, it would only benefit your bombers, first and foremost. And, I mean, this is potentially survivability for your bombers, especially if you're a bomber-focused aircraft carrier, like, say, the Midway, or occasionally the Hakuryu, something that really focuses on its bombers more so, or even, maybe even the Audacious, now that I think about it. But overall, it really doesn't benefit much else. So I would say you get better utility from some other skills that will allow you to do more damage, and it will actually affect your damage. Like, next in line, Proximity Fuse. 10% negation to anti-torpedo protection. And this comes back to what I was talking about earlier with the battleship skill tree, where you had that one skill that gave you enhanced torpedo protection of 10%. This negates that. It removes that 10%, dropping that Yamato now at 65% back down to 55% damage reduction. If you have a battleship that is not carrying that, say a Yamato, suddenly that Yamato only has 45% torpedo damage protection. That Montana only has 27%. And this is across all ships, I might add. So let's say you're looking at a cruiser. There are some cruisers that would have their torpedo protection completely negated by this. So these torpedoes would do full damage of 5,067 points worth of damage to a cruiser. And this is my Midway, so I've got, what? 6 torpedoes that are going out, all now suddenly doing 5,000 damage each to a utterly unprotected cruiser, potentially, with this. So, definite bonus here from your offensive standpoint. Definitely a skill worth taking. Close Quarters Expert. Again, the only argument that I can make here is in favor of the German CVs, and that's if you're not really focusing on much else. And, well, I again specialize in co-op. I like trying to put my German carriers at least in the fray a little bit to enjoy those secondaries, those meme ship abilities just a little bit. So I have my MVR spec for that. But as far as any other aircraft carrier, not a good idea. Not a good idea at all, unless you've got destroyers that are routinely getting close enough to you to take you out. And even then, if you've got a destroyer getting that close to you, you've got bigger problems on your hand, like incoming torpedoes. So, yeah. Yeah. But that being said, it is still there. It does have a 20% increase to your secondary battery firing range, so those batteries will reach out a little bit farther. For the midway, I mean, that's a standard 5 kilometers right now. I mean, that would reach out to 6 kilometers if you've got a higher detectability destroyer out there that's pinging you. That's definitely a bonus. I mean, 20%, that's 6 kilometers. So, I mean, there is some argument to be made for that from a defensive standpoint. But if you're focusing on offense, not helpful. Unless you're in a MVR and, again, going for that meme ship, just charging and having your guns and planes blazing. And if you think about it properly, the aircraft would be blazing in that circumstance, because low survivability aircraft launching in the middle of AA bubbles, you're going to lose those planes fast. Okay, anyway, moving on. Next, we have enhanced aircraft armor. And again, this is a good survivability skill for your aircraft. It's a 25% reduction of AA shell explosions. So, survivability of all of your aircraft, and I think a no-brainer standard must-take skill for your German aircraft carriers. With those, again, severely low survivability aircraft. The next one, I think, is a little bit of a double-edged sword. This is Hidden Menace. You do have a 20% reduction to the reload of damage control party, which for an aircraft carrier, it's automatic for starters. And 20% reduction, that's nothing small. That's almost, let's see, 90 seconds cut by 20%. I mean, that's 18 seconds off of the reload on that. So that's nothing to shake a stick at. But at the same time, how often do you have an aircraft carrier that's relying on that anyway, where fires are going to be sticking and needing that? But I'll let that go. I'll move on. You also have 15% reduction to your detectability. Or 15% bonus to your detectability. So my midway would suddenly only be visible at 13.1 kilometers. And I can argue that if you're wanting to hide in the back and be just that much stealthier, maybe this is worth it. But here's your trade-off, and this is a big one as far as I'm concerned. 50% reduction to the speed of air squadrons returning to your aircraft carrier. If you're worried about running out of aircraft, this skill is not for you. Your aircraft will almost resupply faster than your air squadrons will actually return to the aircraft carrier. So, and the other thing is, this would also affect, say, the evasion of aircraft carrier fighters. Because as soon as they drop those, they're going to climb to return to the aircraft carrier, but they're also going to drop their speed, which means they're going to sit there and get hit by the fighters that are flying around the aircraft carrier. So I could actually see this potentially, especially if you're one of those, like me, where you'll attack an aircraft carrier and then immediately recall the entire squadron, because otherwise you're going to lose them anyway in the whole fighter bubble. This could just potentially lose you more aircraft. I don't, and it would take you even longer to get those aircraft back. So you could potentially exhaust all of your aircraft reserves and be waiting for aircraft to still return, especially if you're into a closer engagement. So, yeah. Hey Wes, how you doing? Finally, the last skill to go over here, we have enhanced reactions, and this affects your fighter patrols and interceptors. You do have a dramatic reduction to the reaction time of those fighters to start going after aircraft that are going through the patrol zone, an 80% reduction. So they react like 5 times faster. But they take longer to get into the patrol area, and you lose 25% of your action time on that. Which, again, I don't know. Again, I'm having a hard time justifying why this entire line of skills even exists, unless you are somebody who's been going on and just complaining about not being able to properly intercept enemy aircraft as an aircraft carrier. Otherwise, you've got other skills that are going to be far more useful to you. I'm doing okay. Just, again, going over the commander skills. I actually just finished going over all of them. I've already gone through everything: destroyer, aircraft carrier, cruiser, battleship. So, I mean, overall, it's pretty interesting looking at some of these skills, taking the in-depth look through all of them. And on that note, looking at the commander skills, I see two very distinct builds for aircraft carriers. You've got survivability builds for the aircraft, which also includes speed builds, because speed is also part of aircraft survivability. You've got DPM builds, where you would sacrifice your DPM over survivability. And then you have your one and only meme ship build, which is your secondary / speed build, speed and survivability for German aircraft carriers. So, yeah, kind of a mixed bag, if you will, depending on where you go. But again, that survivability, speed build, secondary build really only benefits your German aircraft carriers. That's the only area where that's good. The other skills, you're better off, again, survivability, speed, you're better off looking at those for your Hakuryu, Midway, Enterprise, Audacious. There you definitely want more straight survivability or straight DPM, maybe speed, but definitely want to stay away from your secondary builds there. Yeah, that does not surprise me. You want an aircraft carrier that I think is going to excel after these aircraft carrier nerfs. We've got this one right here, the FDR, the steel carrier that's out there right now. This thing's a friggin' beast. But it's also got, like, the most survivable aircraft in the game, so, I mean, it's going to do well against AA, even with the AA buffs. Of course, I'm also staying away from PvP, so I don't have to worry about the AA buffs affecting my aircraft either. So I can enjoy playing with my MVR if I really feel like it. Because I don't think bot commanders actually use any of the captain skills. Yeah, I made a push to get the FDR because, I mean, I'm seeing some of the reviews on the FDR, and I think it's only a matter of time before this ship just gets completely removed. I do only play co-op, so, like I said, I'm staying away from PvP. Although I have taken a little bit of interest into the ranked battles with the new setup, where you don't have to, where it's not as extensive. But 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Well, how do I get steel if I play co-op? It's called the Snowflakes. Let's be honest here. It's the Snowflakes from the last 3 years. And occasional dives into ranked, but other than that. well, I don't get into ranked, so I'm happy if I can just get something out of, say the bronze. Even if I only just get like one rank a week for that 100 seal, I'm happy. So, or 3 battles, I should say. But other than that, but yeah, I was looking at getting the summers with steel, but I've been seeing the adjust how the FDR has been getting reviewed and everything, and I figure it's just a matter of time before this thing gets removed for being too overpowered. Well, first I've also got to have the drive to actually get into silver rank now, don't I? I don't have the tolerance to deal with PvP for that long. Personally, I've never been all that interested in Stalingrad. I've heard people sing its praises, but I've just never I've never been attracted to it personally. And I mean, Shikishima, it's literally just a meme ship for those 20-inch guns. Oh, what I was enjoying with for the few ranked battles that I did do, I actually took my yeah, it was my it was my Laterable into ranked, and I I did something that I'm not sure I will ever pull off again. I managed to sneak entirely around the enemy fleet. I said I was going to do it right off the bat, and other people said, yeah, sure, if you want to do it, go right ahead. So I did. I snuck all the way around the map without being detected once until I was point blank on the enemy CV. By then, I mean, at that point, my team had done so much damage to the other ships that the one cruiser that did try to spot me, and actually did, but by then it was already too late even, was so low health that I just gunned him down before he could even register the fact that I was there, and just closed in on the CV, and it was like the CV had nothing that it could do. There was absolutely nothing it could do because I was right there. And I actually popped up in chat for that match and said, I am surprised I got away with that. And the CV tried to play it off all cool, saying, oh, I just detected you too. I just found you too late. Like, no, you completely failed in trying to find me, period. End of story. You didn't even bother looking for me. So, that was a fun match. Halsey does not have any special bonuses to CVs. He does have one skill, but it's only really capable of being activated in PvP battles, so I'm not going to ever see any benefit from it, and that's this one right here, the Implacable Talent. If you get Confederate, you get a faster restoration time, and that's really about the only thing that benefits aircraft carriers here. Other than that, his aircraft carrier skills are pretty much standard. I'm not sure if there are any commanders that actually have any special CV skills anymore. Confederate probably isn't hard to get, but when you're playing co-op where you don't get achievements, you never get it, so. Like I said, I never get to see the benefit from it personally. But because he is a premium commander, I have him spec'd out for destroyers, battleships, aircraft carriers, basically all 4 of the tech lines. So I can just bounce him around as I see fit. And he's a high skill captain, so I can play around with him on the FDR and not have to worry about getting a commander up to that level. And now that I don't have to worry about complete respec for classes, hooray, I can play with that even more. He's probably the most skilled CV captain I have at this point, too, so why not? Actually, I take it back. My MVR does have the 20-pointer, but that's beside the point. Sure, why don't I go ahead and take the FDR into a battle? We'll see what happens. I do have a deadline. I have to be done with my stream about 9 o'clock. It's 8:30 right now, so I've got about a half an hour. Ooh, straight tier 10. This is going to be interesting. Vermont, Conqueror, Thunderer, Yam. Ouch. And some pretty heavy AA cruisers. No. Just more like early dinner. At least for me.
Action stations.
Let's go ahead and move up to there. What can I say? My family eats late. We're used to keeping a late schedule. Hell, I didn't even have lunch until like 4 o'clock. Of course, I also didn't wake up until like noon. Okay, let's turn so that I don't get those fighters myself. I see a nice big squishy Vermont. Come here, squishy, squishy. Okay, there's the Hindenburg. And of course it's turning into me just as I start my attack run. Shit. Now I've got 25 seconds for an attack that's probably going to do very little damage to that thing. I actually got 3 torps in. That's not bad, actually. Oh, how is that thing's AA range, for crying out loud? There we go. Okay. Oh, that's right. These new U.S. battleships get DFAA, don't they? Holy crap. Okay. Go. Should be a full torp set eaten by that sucker. 8. Not bad. It's able to distract its fighters at least. Why, yes, I do want to get that Vermont gate done. Where are you? There you are. Drop and run. Seven out of 8, but I did land a flood. don't think my ship's detected. No, my aircraft are detected. Nice hits so far. Of course, probably the only benefit that I'm actually getting from this match is that I am focusing on this Vermont with basically nothing else to bother me. Drop down. Come in. And go. Let's go ahead and pull those back too. Let me see if I can get a decent bomb run off on her. Oh, what? Oh shit, there's a Petra there. Okay. And this is where I lose my squadron. Shit. Okay, come on, come on. 3, 2, 1. Just give me something. Ha! Damn. That was my kill, damn it. Okay. Let's see if I can spot out the enemy CV. It's probably the only thing I've got left valuable to do this match. Although A does look like it could probably use some help. Maybe. Iffy. Big if. Excuse me. I really want to spot that CV. There you are. So by the time I get there, it's going to be giving me a nice flat broadside too. Out before they all get killed. Probably will anyway.
Our team has taken the lead.
7 torps. It does not look like I'm getting much of that squadron back, unfortunately. So at best I'll probably only have 1 attack run left on her. With torps, if I even get that far. I really want to save my speed boost on these. I did do a fair chunk of damage to that FDR though. Which way is it going? It's moving across that way. Okay. Nice. See if I can get one more drop, hopefully. No, the others have it spotted. I'm not going to get a shot at it. I guarantee you. Yep, nope, it's gone. Okay. And looks like I might just have my webcam back up for right now, at least. Overall, that wasn't a bad match. All things considered. I mean, it did 126,000 damage. That's better than I can say for some other matches I've had recently. Middle of the team, of course. But otherwise, yeah, not bad. Not bad at all as far as I'm concerned. For co-op, not bad at all. And of course, let's go oldies with goldies. Let's go ahead and try out my Montana on her new build. We're all set. Spotter. Sure, let's go ahead and mount all of those too. Another straight tier 10, midways. Okay. This will be fun. Not necessarily from this side of the map, but it'll probably still be interesting if nothing else.
Action stations.
Well, that's kind of the point, isn't it? I'm not going to waste a spotter on that. However, that might just be worth it. I don't have my reticle. Well, my aim was good. I got one hit on the Montana. Keep my rear guns in reserve for that destroyer. Probably not going to get a decent shot at it. see, therein the argument needs to be made. If you're using Deadeye, then yeah, it is an insanely good skill. But see, I'm not using Deadeye because I'm getting into close quarters. So I'm not... I'm actually using the secondary battery brawler, or not secondary battery brawler, the close quarters combat skill. Let's go ahead and get that set. Yeah, Deadeye really only benefits you if you're staying at long range. In co-op, you don't really get that opportunity half the time. So me, I opt more for reload over the course of short, close encounters. And Daring's going to finish that Montana off, no doubt about it. Alright, so let's get these guns swiveling around already. Something more so is priority.
Our team has taken the lead.
Yeah, see, he's got Marcel already. Okay. Henry. Oh! Nice! Smack! Straight through the bow. And, oh look, here comes the Kremlin. And of course those shells didn't actually go as high on the structure as I wanted. Daring's on low health. Who else is over here? Oh, Cowboys. Yeah, Kremlin, Kremlin, Kremlin. Ah. Well, at least I've got my 10% faster reload, huh? Or is it 8%? Actually, no, I think it's 10%. Like I said. Oh, yeah, nice. Oh, those guns are definitely turning on me, aren't they? Okay. Next up, GK.
Our victory is in sight.
Right in so that we mitigate AP damage at least. Got a nice upper structure hit there. And friendly GK takes it out.
Our victory is in sight.
See, over the course of this whole battle, this is probably the only time I would really, truly want to benefit from Deadeye, going after the CV at long range. And even then, I mean, at long range going against a midway, I mean, I've got that armored deck to contend with, so better dispersion really isn't going to help me out too much with that, because the chances are the shields are still going to ricochet off of that deck. And yeah, I also misjudged that speed across the border. Publique's probably going to get close enough to finish it off anyway. Yeah, see, all of those shells basically just bounced right off that deck, because the only thing that would have done anything to that CV with those shells would have been the plunging fire. So, yeah, better dispersion wouldn't have helped me out there. I mean, I still had a pretty good match, too, overall, all things considered. I mean, having a full player team helps out incredibly also, because, I mean, they'll just basically wreck everything around me. So, yeah. I suppose that, I mean, it's 10:51. I don't think I have enough time to slip in another battle before I have to bug out. So I think I will go on ahead at this point and say goodnight to everybody. And yeah, I'm leaving a lot of dead space here because I'm just kind of wanting to see if anybody has any parting comments or questions. And looks like I just lost my webcam again too, so... well... like I said, I'll go ahead, sign off for the night. For those of you who did stick around and chat with me, I would very much like to thank you for your interaction. I definitely had fun talking with you guys. On that note, though, I will catch you all again next time. I hope you all enjoyed the stream. I hope you all found it informative regarding the upcoming, or regarding the new commander skills. I will, of course, be allowing the video to publish to YouTube so it can be revisited in the future. And I will catch you all again next time. Have a good one, folks. Happy hunting. Stay safe. Stay healthy.